Today is Good Friday, and we find ourselves in the town of El Paisnal, an hour north of San Salvador. Here we see the parish church where the bodies of Father Rutilio Grande, S.J., and his two companions were laid out in front of the altar just after being shot on March 12, 1977. This was his hometown. His parish was in nearby Aguileras. He was widely loved for being a Jesuit priest of the Vatican II Council that opened to the wider world the doors of a closed, self-satisfied church. He was also a Jesuit priest of the Medellin Conference of 1968 that turned the attention of the newly opened Latin American church to the suffering and degradation of the poor in those countries. Grande and his companions were martyrs, like Jesus, who embodied what the prophet Isaiah tells us in the first reading. Even as many were amazed at him, so shall he startle many nations. Because of him kings shall stand speechless. For those who have not been told shall see, and those who have not heard it shall ponder it. The place where Grande and his companions were murdered is now marked by a memorial on the roadside. Their story, like Jesus's, will startle us, and it continues to startle the whole world, just as Isaiah promised. They, and Archbishop Romero, whom we will encounter presently, confronted a dictatorship serving an economic and political system that greatly favored the economic elite, both Salvadoran and foreign. This dictatorship headed a centralized autocratic government and a strong activist military that maintained power through the forcible suppression of opposition. The Catholic hierarchy supported this political and economic structure. When news of the shooting of Grande and his companions reached Archbishop Romero in San Salvador, he rushed to the parish church in El Paisnal and stood before the bodies of his good friend and the friend's companions. The bodies were laid out, Christ-like, in linen cloths, in front of the altar where this house-like covering now stands. This was Romero's conversion moment. He went from being a quietist parish priest and now archbishop to being a proclaimer, like Jesus, on mission for justice for the poor against the political and economic regime. He presided at Grande's funeral in the cathedral in San Salvador and began speaking out in gospel terms against repression of the vast majority of the people. Romero faced great danger. The priestly movement that worked with the poor, teaching them Scripture, Jesus' good news, their dignity as human beings, and Vatican II's call to universal holiness brought increasing opposition, including the terror of death squads that tortured and killed priests, religious sisters, and lay people alike. One death squad leader was Roberto Dobison, who also held national political office during the Salvadoran Civil War from 1980 to 1992, and who advocated the killing of all priests, especially Jesuits, as communists. According to the UN Truth Commission in the 1990s, Dobison ordered the death of Romero, who was assassinated while presiding at the Eucharist in the Carmelite Chapel of Divine Providence Hospital on March 24, 1980. Rather than being forgotten, Romero's assassination set off a 12-year civil war and galvanized international forces to call for justice. Isaiah continues, describing the Messiah and his followers. Oppressed and condemned he was taken away, and who would have thought any more of his destiny? When he was cut off from the land of the living and smitten for the sin of his people, though he had done no wrong, nor spoken any falsehood. An estimated 75,000 people were killed during the Salvadoran Civil War. Grande and his companions, Romero, the Jesuits and their housekeeper and daughter killed at the University of Central America, other priests, religious sisters, and many lay people. Of them, we can say what Isaiah says of the Messiah. If he gives his life as an offering for sin, he shall see his descendants in a long life, and the will of the Lord shall be accomplished through him. Because of his affliction he shall see the light in fullness of days. Through his suffering my servant shall justify many, and their guilt he shall bear. Therefore I will give him his portion among the great, because he has surrendered himself to death and was counted among the wicked. With an irony that only God can arrange, Romero's homily, given at the moment he was assassinated, was just on this topic. Quote, "This Holy Mass, the Eucharist, is itself an act of faith. At the moment the wheaten host is changed into the body of the Lord, and the wine in the chalice is transformed into the blood of the Lord. He has shown us the price of salvation. May this body immolated and his blood sacrificed for humans nourish us also, so that we may give our body and our blood to suffering and to pain, like Christ, not for self, but to impart notions of justice and peace to our people." End quote. On this Good Friday, Jesus, like Romero and the others, were killed under similar circumstances. We accompany Jesus during the Good Friday liturgy. Let's be with Romero now as he speaks his final words.
Unamos pues íntimamente fe y esperanza a este momento de oración.